Sup, nerds? It's James,
With Jimmy.
and today we're going to talk about one of the most interesting film, quintologies I have ever watched.
This was definitely a treat. We obviously do the Flashback Fridays, but this was one that kind of had to rush 4 movies into the hopper because there's one in the theater right now, which I wanted to expose James. It's not one of those ones where, hey, James, you're 12. Let's get you started. And what did we get started on?
Mad Max.
The Wonderful World of Max. So we started from the beginning with the first one. Thoughts?
Not what I thought it was going to be. It's not post-apocalyptic Australia, it's just Australia.
It's interesting to revisit these. They've been in my life for as long as I can remember. The first one is not my favorite. It is an interesting world, but I feel like the sequels really portray the action and even have a better story. But you wouldn't be anywhere without the first one. And they set up this world, and they set up Mel Gibson as Mad Max.
And what's very interesting about the first film is that what most people think of Mad Max is not at all what the first film is. It's about a group of cops going out and basically fighting crime in very, very fast cars. And what's very interesting is that you see the blood and the backbone of Mad Max in the first movie, but it's just not post-apocalyptic. And it's very interesting to see what George Miller did and then would go on to do with the series.
There's very much resemblance in this first one to movies like Last House on the Left, where it's literally just a gang who are terrorizing other people. And there's a bigger scope, as James said. We have them policing the roads and the highway systems. But when it gets down to it, we have Toe Cutter and his gang essentially seeking out Max and trying to exact their own version of vengeance. And then at the end, we have Max getting his, which is what Max really has become known for, getting his own vengeance. So it's a tough story. It's a very independent film out of Australia by George Miller and Byron Kennedy. It's just an awesome world they introduce us to. But in my opinion, the second one is one of the greatest action films of all times, Mad Max 2, or if you're in the United States like me, The Road Warrior.
Yes. 2 is where the series really finds its identity, which a lot of times you'll notice that a series takes 2 or 3 movies to find its footing. Mad Max definitely was Mad Max when it finally decided to go post-apocalyptic, which does raise a lot of questions timeline-wise, but that's for another very nerdy video.
I really enjoy in the second one that we've obviously upped the violence and the sort of in-your-face tactics that are going on, but it also gives us more of an impetus on why Max reacts, because he doesn't want to. He's literally the reluctant hero. He wants gasoline in his Interceptor, and that's it. That's pretty much what he wants. Oh, and his dog. And he wants to take care of his dog, named Dog, which is awesome that it's a blue heeler, and we have a blue heeler and very similar. But then he runs into the gyrocopter guy.
That's my snake.
Which is, I mean, they're, and I guess that's interesting too, because they do add an element of comedy, which really wasn't in the first one, and it has everything to do with the gyrocopter, and that this dude is a trip, and his interaction, and he keeps insisting with Max that they make great partners, yet at the same time, he's the one that's having to be in chains and really be Max's prisoner, and it's an interesting dynamic. But yes, literally in the end, they have this weird Bond partnership.
And that's what's very interesting when you go from the first Mad Max to Road Warrior, is that the first Mad Max was very serious with itself, for as goofy and zany as it could be sometimes. The second Mad Max really leans into the absurdity of the apocalypse. You have a bunch of random weirdos dressed to the kinky nines. I mean, a dude has only assless chaps on. You have the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, which is a dude in basically leather underpants and a hockey mask. I'm trying to think. You have the feral kid. I don't think I need to say more than that. And then the gyrocopter, which it's a miracle he found that much leather in the apocalypse. And it's very much George Miller deciding to throw convention out the window and just have fun with every aspect of it, which really boils down to character writing as well.
And I think that's a good indication is that the characters in the first one, Max was defined. In the second one, we have more definition for the villains. Humongous is just looking at him, he's terrifying. Hockey Mask, terrifying. But even before that, we meet Wex, who's the ashless chaps guy. And he's insane with the little blonde kid on the back of his motorcycle, obviously inferring all sorts of interesting, especially at that time, abnormal behavior for most people. But again, this is post-apocalypse. They do what they want to do. So the villainy is far better. His little tribe is far better. And even the humor, which you could say is not humor, but one of my favorite parts is the feral kid throws his very sharp-edged boomerang, and the one doofus tries to catch it and loses his fingers. And like everybody's laughing, and he's sitting there going, like, yeah, okay. It's funny, but it's not. Very violent.
Very much so, but funny in a violent way, which is deeply concerning. Anyways, what I love about this movie is you get to see more of Max being Max, essentially. He's angry. He's mad. That's why they call him Mad Max. And it's very interesting to see his evolution from kind of what was a goody two-shoes to I'll do it because it's the right thing and it benefits me. And it's very interesting to see his progression in this film as he goes from kind of just a loner to basically starting the myth of the Road Warrior in the first multi-car chase scene of the series that has basically become Mad Max and what it's known for.
And there's also a great twist. This is where this isn't just an action movie for action's sake. The story is really good, and the way that the innocent citizens of the oil town escape is trickery, and not even Max was in on it. So there's a great scene at the end that lets us know, no, there's a twist, and it was pretty cool, which then leads us to Thunderdome. Now, Thunderdome was out in theaters when I was a kid. So were the other two, but this one I vividly remember. It was a big deal on the playgrounds. I was in elementary school, and they had these dome things, and you would literally have kids climbing up the side, and 2 men enter, 1 man leave, and it's like, what are we doing here? This is crazy.
You have broken the law.
So I understand in the mythos of Mad Max, Thunderdome is not exactly the most popular or everybody's favorite. But to me, because that was the one I remember when it came out, it holds a special place in my heart. Now, as I grew up, I learned more that George Miller did not direct the whole film. His partner and good friend, Byron Kennedy, was in a helicopter accident scouting locations, and he died. And George basically said to Warner Brothers, I don't want to do this. I have no interest in it. It's not something I want to pursue anymore without my right-hand man, Byron Kennedy. Now, the film got filmed, and they realized it needed oomph, and that's where they did persuade George Miller to come back and specifically shoot the end scene with the train, which is just phenomenal. And you could tell, you could 100% tell that is all George Miller. You have a train on a track. How interesting could that be? Well, dear Lord, he does it with all the strange vehicles running on methane. Yes, I know it's methane, but methane's funnier to say. And which is pig shit. And they're all going after the train. And once again, we have some amazing villains set up in that Master Blaster.
Yes.
And he starts as a villain, but it's so odd. And this is what's great writing is then Master, who survives, then becomes an ally with Max. When in the beginning, he was the villain because Auntie, who ran Bartertown, the amazing Tina Turner, did not want Master Blaster in charge, so she set Max up to do what he does best, to take somebody out.
And you can tell that was a very George Miller-esque kind of twist. You'll notice that with Thunderdome, you can see parts that are written by Miller and parts that aren't written by Miller, because this definitely has a huge backbone from what he was originally trying to do, and they borrowed a lot of that. So you can tell what Miller wrote, what Miller didn't write, and it also makes it a fun game to see where he's really at his creative peak and where Warner Brothers needed to inject something. And that's where a lot of the movie really comes together, is that so much of the Warner Brothers writing is still good enough to fit that you're never really taken out of it by dissonant writing. It's all still Mad Max, and it never feels off in that way. And that's where even the addition of the kids who are waiting for what was it, Captain Walker, they don't feel out of place, because whether it was written by Miller or not, it's still Mad Max in its conception.
And I think this allowed us to expand the universe when we came to Fury Road and Furiosa, in that we're no longer this small little community in the first movie and the second movie. Now, there's a whole nother community within this range, which is these kids that were part of a plane crash once upon a time, and now have literally found this oasis, but they have passed down stories of what they're supposed to do in the history. So they still believe once Captain Walker, who they mistake as Mad Max, will save them, which leads to the ending. And now we're not with the gyrocopter anymore. He's now got a weird ass World War II plane, whatever, and his own son. And they're literally not the same character. If you want to argue with me, they are. I'm not going to argue against it, but there's no recognition between Max and himself. So I don't think they're the same character. But what's cool is he literally starts the whole protagonist with Max as he's flying over to the end when he saves the day once again.
Yes, and I love how this furthers the whole myth of Max as this hero who comes and goes, in the second Mad Max, the first post-apocalyptic one, he's basically just a drifter who does nice things because it benefits him. Then you have Max, who's like, I want my vehicle back, to, I got to save these kids because, well, they've been lied to, partially, kind of, it's a little hazy. And it's just furthering the character of, I do nice things because nice things good, and also I benefit.
And his mythos, his legend grows because he saved these kids. These kids do make it to the big city, and exactly what he described with, I can't say it. How do they say it?
Pox eclipse.
I can never say it correctly like that. But they see that it was Sydney, because they show the opera house.
Yes.
It was destroyed, and they were able to go find sanctuary, and it looked like they found other tribes. And so the mythos of Max grows because he's the one that saved them. And then the ending is just fabulous, where Auntie is basically standing over Max as he has just jumped out of a car to save the day and destroyed most of her army. And she's like, what a pair. And then it obviously leads into her song, We Don't Need Another Hero. And I understand she's a musician, but I love Tina Turner as Auntie, as the head of Bartertown. She is so much fun in this movie, and she really plays off well against Mel Gibson's Mad Max.
And you can tell that pairing definitely went on to inspire what would be Max and Furiosa and Fury Road.
So this is the last time we see Mel Gibson as Mad Max, which is disappointing, but we do have, about 20 plus years or whatever between Thunderdome and Fury Road, which leads us to Tom Hardy, Fury Road.
Yeah, I am awaited.
Just the start. I remember when the trailer came out and just being so excited. There were so many starts and stops to this movie. George Miller is back full force after having taken a break to make Babe Pig in the City, Happy Feet 2. This kills me that he makes some of the best violent action films of all time, and then, I'm going to make some kid movies.
That'll do, Pig.
What?
That'll do.
It's so funny to me, but he's back. The trailers were amazing, and just the beginning where Tom Hardy is standing outside the Interceptor, kind of surveying, eats a lizard, and then he's being chased and immediately loses his Interceptor.
Which is like a running trend because, dear God, dude, that's the last of the V8 Interceptors, as we've been told several times. Stop losing it.
Yeah, he loses a lot of the last V8 Interceptors. So he's immediately, and this is where the story takes a turn, because I guess not necessarily, but yes, it does, because Max had always sort of been a free man, and now he's not. He is a blood bag, essentially, for one of the war boys who's running low, who happens to be Nicholas Hoult. Which is
hell
awesome.
yeah.
So he's hooked up to his, he's a blood bag hooked up to his war boy, And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Charlize Theron, as Furiosa, decides, we're going to finally carry out this plan I've been having for years.
Yes.
And we're going to take my war rig and rescue these fine young ladies and get them away from Immortan Joe, played by the same dude that was Toe Cutter. I love that synergy. Love it.
I would like to say, most boring apocalypse name ever. Like, you could have picked anything, and you picked Immortan Joe. Literally the most plain name of all time. Not the Immortan part, the Joe part. But anyways...
Well, I will disagree, only because we learn in this one and the next one what he names his sons. So I'm not sure he did do anything wrong with his own name when you have Rictus, Scrotus, and what was the other one?
Okay, so it's Rictus Erectus, Scrotus, and... Oh, it was like something... Corpus Colossus.
Yeah, Corpus Colossus, the little dude who's in the chair in Fury Road.
Which, yeah, maybe he was saving the good names for his kids.
We can honestly see that we're in post-apocalypse. We have a lot of nuclear fallout, and Immortan Joe's whole goal is to have a healthy, full-life child. He does not have that because we have Rictus and we have Erectus.
No, Rictus Erectus. Then you have Scrotus.
Scrotus isn't in this one.
Oh, right. No, Rictus Erectus and Corpus Colossus.
Yes, and they both, we don't know exactly what's wrong with Rictus. We can see a little more with the other one. They're not healthy. Not at all. So he has this harem, and his goal is to impregnate them. Then they have a whole nother batch of ladies who only provide milk for the community and the kids. And then we have Immortan Joe. The whole reason why he has power is because he's in control of the water. So it's a whole screwed up post-apocalyptic world, because then we meet up with the bullet farmer, and then we meet up with the people eater who does the books, who I don't know how George Miller sleeps at night with these images and the things that are in his head, because this is some fucked up characters and scenarios and messed up.
It's really impressive how he's able to fully craft this visceral feeling post-apocalyptic world. It's one of the few post-apocalyptic stories that's the post-apocalypse that I can actually sit through without being like, this is boring, I've seen this before. Every part of it is so brilliantly designed, from costumes, characters. My God, the vehicle design in this, you just know that the stunt people had such a heyday with all of these different vehicle designs, learning how to drive them, do stunts with them. The pyrotechnics had to have had the best day of their careers with this film. Like, I have a running joke when we're watching movies. It's, where did the budget go? And this whole movie is just, the budget continuously went down the drain with the amount of explosions and set design and just everything to do with this film. And what I love the most is just how good the writing is this time around. There's a beautiful moment where it's dead of the night. Everything is like deep blue colored, which I just love that choice of coloring. And they're going through, it's like a sandy marsh, and they get caught several times. So they're having to get the rig out of the mud and then keep pushing forward. And there's this great scene where the rig is stuck in the mud, and Max goes in to stop the lead of the bullet farm, and you don't see what happens. You just hear an explosion and then Max walking back. And it is the perfect scene that encapsulates who Max is. And I just love it so much.
And we're back with some humor, because as the bullet farmer is chasing them in the dead of night, as the rest of the crew is removing rock from a overpass, and you have him, and he was told explicitly to not hurt the girls, and he's just shooting his guns blindly into the black. He can't see anything.
Literally blindly.
And not yet.
Oh, not yet.
This is where the humor comes in, because then Max is shooting a sniper rifle at him, and he's missing. And finally, Furiosa's like, and Max relents, gives it to her, puts it on his shoulder, don't breathe, boom, one shot, blinds the bullet farmer because it hits a light and blinds him. So then the two dudes in the car with him are like, can you see anything? He's like, move it closer. And the flame is like right in front of his eyes. And he's like, I don't see anything. It's like, I literally can't move this any closer. It's like, you're blind. Put a blindfold on him, and he's shooting his guns again, just randomly. And it's like, this is the sick, dumb, awesome Australian humor that George Miller is providing us, and I love it.
Exactly. So much of this film is just how stupid can it get without feeling too absurd, which at this point, there is no such thing as too absurd. Mad Max is how crazy can we get? And it's, oh my God, you should not be allowed to drive for 24 hours after this movie, because it's one of those ones where you just want to really go 90 on the highway. I am not endorsing that. Don't go 90 on the highway. It's a very visceral film and you feel it, but it's not just visceral in the action. There are some gut-wrenching moments. A standout piece is when they finally reunite with the sisters and they discover that the thing Furiosa has been looking for, the green, died. They couldn't maintain it. And there's this gut-wrenching shot where she just falls to her knees and the wind blows the dunes, and it's just so gut-wrenching, especially for her character.
And not to get ahead of ourselves, but when you see Furiosa, this scene becomes even more powerful because she has literally waited most of her life for this plan to take effect, and then to find out the green is gone. And these 6 women are all
6.
that is left. And it's devastating because this is where she's from. This was her homeland. This is everything she knew and she'd been fighting to get back for, and it's gone. But that leads to the impetus for the ending, which is amazing. And this is where Max comes in. And by the way, this is one of the first times where Max has a partner, a legit partner, and they do not want to be partners to start. It basically literally becomes out of necessity. And we're meeting new tribes that we haven't seen before. And out of necessity, they become handshake partners, even though they don't want to. But at the end, he convinces the group that this is what they should do. And it's a bloodbath, and it gets violent, and not everybody makes it out the way they started, but they win. And they defeat the Morton Joe, and they basically take back the Citadel.
And Miller is one of the few directors who creates an action sequence that could be an hour long and I would sit through it. Like, the entire goddamn movie is action sequences broken up by like bits and pieces of low points. And it's just such a well-composed movie of action set pieces that you never feel like something's going wrong or that you need a break from the action. The action just keeps going and it never feels bad. And that's what's so good about it, is that it's just Mad Max in every sense of the title. And I can't stop gushing about like how the action plays into the character and the set and the vehicle design. I mean, hell, you have Immortan Joe's vehicle, which is just 2 car hoods strapped together on the base of a monster truck. Who the hell comes up with that?
And it's beautiful. And the war rigs, there's basically 2 in this movie. One is Furiosa's, and the other one is the Man-Eaters. And when the Man-Eaters is blown up, destroyed, as Max was driving it, done on purpose, the visuals are just gorgeous because essentially it's this huge gas tank that they blow up. And right before this, we had lost a couple of the sisters. Like, literally, Man-Eater ran one over. It's just, you see this horrific, the good guys are losing. And then Max just blows this thing up, and it's gorgeous. And everything I've read about it is George Miller spent the in-between years plotting in his head these visuals and images that he wanted. And so much so, if you watch it, the camera flows with the action, building up more kinetic energy in the viewer. So you have these motorcycles jumping these dunes, going over the war rig, dropping bombs, and the camera is following it, and you don't even know. That's how visceral it is. You don't know that you are a part of this until you literally go up to leave. And you're like, oh my God, I want to drive 120 miles per hour on the highway. I'm in the war rig. Let's go. And it's like, oh my God, you have to. The music is another one that just adds to that feeling of, I am pumped from just watching a movie.
Yes, and Miller's writing comes back full steam. He lets the good guys lose so much in this, and that is his bread and butter. Is you never know what's coming next. You can never expect something to happen with Miller because he'll just basically lead up to, oh, good guys are going to win. Nope. You thought? No. And my favorite story about Mad Max Fury Road's conception is that when they were editing, he had his wife edit it because he didn't want to edit it to make it look like just another action movie out of the industry. And that's what makes it so good, is that because it's not edited like a classic action film, it's so much more choppy and just visceral and very, very adrenaline pumping.
And I would argue, yes, Thunderdome, they finally got a budget.
Yes.
But this one, you could tell it was basically a blank check. And I know they ran into a lot of issues filming in Nairobi. There was rain and floods that destroyed a bunch of the sets. But you could tell they have a budget in this. And to see what George Miller can do with a budget is phenomenal. And one of my favorite framing shots is the end as they make it back to the Citadel. She's got Morton Joe's car up on the lift. She's going up. They've shown he's dead, Morton Joe. And Max was on the elevator lift going up. And then all of a sudden he's not. He's in the crowd and Furiosa looks down. And it's sort of this. And then he's gone. And he's back to being anonymous dude, Max, anti-hero.
Yes.
Which leads us to Furiosa, which we will deal with in another video because we want to give that its own review. But let us know what you guys think of the 4 in the first set of 4 for the Mad Max franchise. Let us know what you guys think of Max, Mel Gibson, Tom Hardy, and then this new hero we get with Furiosa, who's probably the first hero we see in the movie. She has no other want other than to get back to the green and save these ladies. So she's basically our first hero.
And remember, nerds, you are awaited.